The classroom was silent. Every student sat perfectly still, watching the large metal container at the front of the room. Inside that container was something dangerous, something that could kill them all if it escaped. Instructor Veltaris stood near the container. Her 8 arms moved slowly as she checked the security fields. Her skin, which was like crystal, changed from blue to yellow. She was excited but also nervous. "Today you will learn about fear," she said. Her voice came through the translators that every student wore. "You will learn why some planets are called Deathworlds." Daiho sat in the 3rd row. He was human, one of only 5 humans in the entire Galactic Academy. The Academy was a huge space station where students from hundreds of different alien species came to learn. Daiho had been here for 2 years studying how to understand and help different kinds of alien life. Next to him sat his friend Hyejin. She was also human, from the same planet called Earth. She studied engineering and often helped other students understand why humans acted so strange. "I have a bad feeling about this," Hyejin whispered to Daiho. Daiho smiled. "It will be interesting." In front of them sat Bryn, an insect-like alien with 4 eyes. Bryn was the smartest student in class, but he was always confused by humans. Humans did things that made no sense. They laughed when they should be afraid. They touched things that could hurt them. Veltaris touched a control panel. "This creature comes from Vrak 9. That planet is rated Class 7 on the Deathworld scale. Everything on that planet evolved to kill." The students moved back in their seats. Some made worried sounds. Others released smell chemicals that meant they were scared. The container opened slowly. Inside, something moved. It was big, about the size of a large earth wolf. Its body was covered in black scales that looked like armor. Red lights pulsed under its skin, glowing with each heartbeat. The creature had 6 claws on each foot. Each claw was as long as a human hand. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth. On its back were poisonous spines. Its tail was thick with muscle. "This is a Vrakian slasher," Veltaris explained. "In its natural home, it hunts in groups. It can kill animals 3 times its size. Its claws can cut through metal. Its venom can paralyze most species in seconds." The creature looked around the classroom. Its eyes were bright yellow. It made a low sound like distant thunder. Every student in the room felt their bodies tell them to run. Every student except Daiho. Daiho leaned forward. He tilted his head and looked at the creature carefully. Then he did something that made everyone freeze. He smiled. "Oh," Daiho said quietly. "It's like a big cat." Hyejin grabbed his arm. "Daiho, no. Daiho, yes," he replied, still smiling. Veltaris heard him. Her skin flashed bright red, which meant alarm. "Student Daiho, please stay in your seat." But Daiho was already standing. "Professor, may I approach the containment field?" The classroom exploded with noise. Students made sounds of panic. Bryn's 4 eyes went wide. "He wants to die," Bryn said.
"Humans want to die."
Veltaris should have said no. Every rule said she should say no. But she was a scientist. She was curious. What would happen? "You may approach," she said slowly. "But do not touch the field. Stay at least 2 meters away." Daiho walked down the aisle. His steps were calm and slow. He moved like he was walking to get food, not approaching a deadly predator. The Vrakian slasher watched him come closer. The creature's red lights pulsed faster. It showed its teeth. The growl got louder. Daiho reached the safe area in front of the containment field. He stopped. Then he did something that made no sense to anyone watching. He knelt down. He made himself smaller, less threatening. Then he held out his hand toward the field, palm down, fingers slightly bent. "Hey there, kitty," Daiho said softly. "Aren't you pretty?" The translator tried to make sense of the word kitty but failed. It was a human word, a name humans gave to small Earth predators that lived in their homes. This was not a small predator. The Vrakian slasher stared at Daiho. Its head lowered. The muscles in its legs tensed. It looked like it was going to attack. Then it took 1 step forward, then another. The security system almost activated. If it did, knockout gas would fill the container in seconds. But Veltaris had her hand on the override. She couldn't look away. The creature walked right up to the energy field. Only a thin wall of force separated it from Daiho now. This close, everyone could see how big it really was. How dangerous. Daiho kept his hand steady. "Good kitty," he said in that same soft voice. "You're curious, aren't you? Not mean. Just want to know what I am." The Vrakian slasher's posture changed. Its shoulders relaxed slightly. The red lights on its body started to pulse slower, more steady. Yijin stood up. "He's reading its body language," she called out to the class. "On Earth, we have animals like this, predators. We learn to understand them." "You live with predators?" Bryn asked, his voice high with disbelief. "We sleep with them," another human voice said from the back. It was Nara, the third human student. "We let them sleep on our beds. On our faces sometimes." Several students made choking sounds. The Vrakian slasher did something then that no one expected. It sat down, not like a dog sits, but in a crouch. Its tail moved slowly from side to side. Its head tilted, it looked curious. Deho made a soft clicking sound with his tongue. The creature's head tilted the other way. Veltaris moved closer, her scientific mind racing. "Student Deho, explain what you are doing." "I'm communicating," Deho said simply. "Not with words. With body language. I'm showing I'm not a threat. I'm showing respect. And I'm watching for signs that it wants to communicate back." "And what signs do you see?" Veltaris asked. "It's not hunting. Look at how it's sitting. If it wanted to attack, it would be low, ready to jump. Its tail would be still. But it's moving slowly. That usually means curiosity, not aggression." "Usually?" Bryn squeaked. "Usually," Deho confirmed. "I could be wrong, but I don't think I am." The creature made a sound, not a growl this time. Something else. It was lower, coming from deep in its chest. It sounded almost like a purr. Deho's smile got bigger. "Professor, I have a request." "I'm afraid to hear it," Veltaris said, but her skin was now bright purple, which meant intense curiosity. "I want to work with this creature. I think I can build trust with it. Real trust. Not just training, but friendship." The classroom was silent again. Everyone thought Deho was crazy. Completely insane. But Veltaris was thinking about what this could mean. If a human could bond with a Class 7 predator, if this wasn't just luck or madness, what would that mean for how they understood consciousness, for how they approached other dangerous species?
"Daily sessions," she said finally.
30 minutes. Always with the containment field active until I say otherwise. And you will write a full report on human-animal psychology. Deho nodded. Deal. That night, Deho came back to the lab alone. The Vrakian slasher was moving around its container, exploring. When Deho entered the room, the creature stopped. It looked at him. Deho sat on the floor, far from the field. He pulled out a data pad and started reading out loud. Just reading, not talking to the creature. His voice was steady and calm. 20 minutes later, the Vrakian slasher lay down. It was still watching him, but it looked relaxed. The red lights in its scales pulsed slow and easy. When Deho stood to leave, he noticed something important. The creature had moved to the side of the container closest to where he had been sitting. It wanted to be near him. 1 week had passed since that first day. The Galactic Academy was buzzing with talk about the human and the deadly creature. Students from every department found excuses to walk past Professor Veltaris's lab. The observation window, where people could watch safely from outside, was fully booked for weeks. Deho came to visit the Vrakian slasher twice every day, morning and evening. He had given it a name, Bada. In the Korean language from Earth, it meant ocean. Deho chose that name because the way the creature's red lights moved under its black scales reminded him of waves on dark water. Every visit was the same routine. Deho would enter the lab and sit in the same spot on the floor. He would talk in a soft voice or read from his datapad. Sometimes he brought objects for Bada to investigate through the containment field. A warm rock, a scratching post made of strong material. He watched carefully to see what Bada liked. Bada liked the warm rock. The creature would lie near it when the lab was cold. Bada also liked the scratching post. It would drag its claws along it, the same way earth cats sharpened their claws on furniture. Hyejin often came to observe. She was taking notes for the research paper they had to write. "You know what's fascinating?" she said one day, watching through the observation window. "It's learning to trust you, but you're also learning to trust it." Deho nodded. He was inside the lab, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Bada was lying down near the containment field, as close to Deho as the energy barrier would allow. Trust goes both ways. I have to trust that Bada won't hurt me. Bada has to trust that I won't hurt it. "Do you think it understands that?" asked Nara, who was also watching. "Maybe not in words," Deho said. "But in feelings? Yes. Definitely yes." On the 8th day, everything changed. Professor Velteris made an announcement before the session started. Today we are going to lower the containment field. The observation gallery went silent. Then it exploded with noise. Protests in 20 different languages filled the air. It's too soon, Bryn shouted. The creature will attack. Velteris held up 4 of her 8 arms for silence. We have monitored every session. The Vrakian slasher shows no aggression toward student Deho. Its stress hormones are at the lowest levels we've ever recorded for this species. It is time for the next step. Deho was already in the lab. His heart was beating fast, but his face was calm. He knew this was important. This would prove that what he felt was real. The containment field made a soft humming sound as it powered down. Then it was gone. Nothing but empty air between Deho and Bada. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Bada's yellow eyes were fixed on Deho. The creature's nose holes expanded, breathing in his scent. The red lights under its scales pulsed faster, but not in the angry way. This was excitement, interest. Deho didn't move toward Bada. That would be wrong. Pushing too fast could break everything they had built. Instead, he sat where he was, hand extended, palm down. Your choice, kitty, he said softly. You can come to me or you can stay there. Either way is fine. 5 minutes passed. In the observation gallery, no one was breathing. Every eye and sensor was locked on the scene below. Then Bada stood up. The creature moved slowly, carefully. Not like a predator stalking prey, like someone approaching something new and interesting. Its head was lowered, but not in aggression. In curiosity, Beta walked across the space between them. 3 meters. 2 meters. 1 meter, then Bada's head was right in front of Deho's hand. The creature sniffed. Its nose holes were right against Deho's palm. Deho could feel the warm air of Bada's breath. Then Bada did something beautiful. The creature pressed the side of its head against Deho's hand. Moving very slowly, Deho let his fingers curl. He scratched gently behind the ridge where Bada's ear holes were located. The scales were smooth and warm like sun-heated stone. Bada's eyes closed halfway. The red lights all over its body suddenly changed pattern. They started moving in slow waves from head to tail. The pattern was hypnotic, beautiful. I think that means happy, Deho said to the cameras. His own voice was full of wonder. That night, the footage of that moment was sent across the galaxy. Millions of beings on hundreds of worlds watched a human scratch a deadly predator behind the ears. They watched the predator lean into the touch like it enjoyed it. The scientific community exploded with questions and theories. How was this possible? What did it mean? Was this special to humans, or could other species do this too? Professor Velteris found herself at the center of a storm. She received hundreds of messages every day. Some praised her work. Others said it was too dangerous. But all of them wanted more information. She started working closely with the 3 human students. Together they began documenting not just what Deho was doing with Beta, but the whole system of how humans understood animals. On Earth, Yejin explained to a gathering of professors, humans spent thousands of years learning to live with other species. We didn't just hunt them or run from them. We made friends with them. We brought wolves into our camps and they became dogs. We let wild cats live in our grain stores to hunt mice and they became pets. We even domesticated birds, reptiles, insects. We have a saying, if it exists, someone has tried to pet it. The other professors looked disturbed by this information. But not everyone wanted to just watch and learn. Some wanted to try for themselves. Bryn volunteered first. The insect-like student was determined to prove that humans weren't special. If a human could bond with a Deathworld predator, so could he. Deho agreed to help. With everyone watching safely from the observation gallery, Bryn entered the lab where Bada was resting. It did not go well. Bada immediately stood up. The creature's posture went tense. Its red light started flashing quickly. A low growl came from its throat. Bryn froze. I'm not a threat, he said, trying to copy what Deho did. But Bada could smell his fear. The creature's species had evolved on a world where everything was dangerous. They could read the chemical signals that other beings gave off. Bryn was terrified, and Bada knew it. Deho stepped in. Bada, it's okay. He's a friend. When Bada heard Deho's voice, the creature's attention shifted. The tension left its body. It walked past Bryn completely, ignoring the insect-like alien, and went straight to Deho. Bryn left the lab shaking. He wasn't hurt, but he was deeply shaken. How, he asked. How do you have no fear? Deho thought about the question. It's not that I have no fear. Fear keeps you alive, but I don't let fear control me. And I think Bada can tell the difference. Yejin had been watching the whole thing. Later, she shared her thoughts with Daeho over food in the cafeteria. You know what scares them most? She said. What? Not that you can do this. That you want to. Every other species in the galaxy sees something dangerous and thinks avoid it or kill it. Humans see something dangerous and think, can we be friends? That's what they can't understand, Daeho laughed. When you say it like that, it does sound a little crazy. It's very crazy, Hijin agreed. But it's also beautiful. That night, Daeho had his regular evening session with Bada. The creature was now comfortable enough with Daeho that it would let him touch anywhere except the venomous spines on its back. Daeho had learned where Bada liked to be scratched. Behind the ear ridges was the favorite spot. But Bada also liked firm pressure along its spine between the spines. While Daeho was scratching Bada's scales, the creature made a new sound. It was a deep rumble that came from its chest. The sound made the floor vibrate slightly. Are you purring? Daeho asked, delighted. Do you purr? Bada's eyes were half closed in contentment. The rumble continued. You do purr. I can't wait to tell everyone that you purr. But then the station alarm started blaring. Red lights flashed in the hallways. An automated voice announced, Emergency. Containment breach in exotic specimens wing. All personnel evacuate to safe zones. Daeho stood up quickly. I need to go, Kitty. But before he could reach the door, the lab's emergency system activated. Heavy blast doors slammed down over all the exits. The lab sealed itself off from the rest of the station. The containment protocol had a flaw. It was designed to keep dangerous things inside the lab from getting out. But Bada's enclosure door had been left open. The creature was already outside its cage, and Daeho was locked inside the lab with it, with no way out until the emergency ended. The emergency alarm screamed through the station. Red lights flashed on and off, making everything look like a nightmare. Somewhere in the exotic specimens wing, a containment breach had released something into the ventilation system. The station's automatic systems were doing their job, sealing off sections to prevent spread. But the system had made a mistake. Daeho was sealed inside Professor Veltaris's lab. The heavy blast doors would not open until the emergency was over. That could take hours, and Beta was loose in the lab with him. In the observation gallery above, Hyejin and Nara pressed against the reinforced window. They had been there for the evening session, taking notes as always. Now they watched in horror as the situation developed. Override the lockdown, Hyejin said to the computer system. Negative. Contamination protocol is active. Doors will remain sealed until station security confirms containment of the breach. How long? Nara asked. Estimated time, 2 to 4 hours. Hyejin slammed her hand against the wall. We need to get him out of there. Professor Veltaris arrived, running as fast as her 8 legs could carry her. Her crystal skin was flashing white, which meant pure panic. What happened? Why is the lab sealed? Automatic lockdown, Nara explained. When the breach happened in the other wing, this section sealed itself. And Bada? Veltaris asked, though she could see the answer below. The Vrakian slasher was moving through the lab. Not in its enclosure. Not behind any barrier. Free. Inside the lab, Daeho forced himself to stay calm. His heart was pounding. His instincts screamed at him to run, to hide, to get away from the predator. But he knew that would be the worst thing he could do. Moving suddenly would trigger Bada's hunting instincts. Running would make him prey, so Daeho sat down. He sat in his usual spot, the place where he always sat during their sessions. He made his body language as normal as possible, but nothing about this was normal. The emergency lights were flashing. The alarms were loud. The whole station was vibrating with the sound of containment systems activating throughout the facility. For Beta, who had spent weeks in quiet, controlled conditions, this was terrifying chaos. The creature was stressed. Daeho could see it in every movement. Bada's scales were standing up slightly, making the creature look bigger. The red lights under its skin were flashing rapidly, almost strobing. The creature's tail was lashing back and forth. Bada knocked over a cart of scientific instruments. The crash of metal on floor echoed through the lab. The creature spun toward the sound, claws out, ready to fight whatever made that noise. Daeho started talking. Hey, Beta. Hey there, Kitty. I know this is scary. All these lights and sounds. But you're safe. Nothing here will hurt you. I promise. His voice was steady. Calm. the same voice he used every day during their sessions. Bada's head turned toward Deho. In the flashing red emergency lights, the creature looked like something from a nightmare. All teeth and claws and coiled muscle. A perfect killing machine, designed by evolution to survive on a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. For a moment, Deho wondered if he had been fooling himself. Maybe all of this had been luck. Maybe Bada had just been tolerating him. And now, with stress and chaos everywhere, the creature's true nature would come out. But then he pushed that thought away. No. He knew Bada. They had built something real over these weeks. Trust wasn't something you could fake. Come here, kitty, Deho said. Come here where it's familiar. You know this spot. This is our spot. In the observation gallery, Veltaris was trying to access emergency controls. I can flood the lab with sedative gas. It will put the Vrakian slasher to sleep in seconds. Don't, Hijin said quickly. Sudden chemical changes in the air might trigger an attack response. Deho would have maybe 3 seconds before Bada struck. Then what do we do? Veltaris asked, her voice high with stress. We trust him, Nara said. We trust them both. Hyejin's hand hovered over the emergency release button. If she hit it, the doors would open and Deho could escape. But it would also mean failure. It would mean they didn't trust what had been built. And it would probably end with Bada being labeled as too dangerous. Too unpredictable. She didn't press the button. Below, Bada was moving toward Deho, not the cautious, curious approach from their first contact. This was direct, purposeful. Every step brought the predator closer, 2 meters away, 1 meter. Deho slowly extended his hand. Palm down, fingers slightly bent, the same gesture he had used dozens of times before. You know me, he said softly. We're friends. You like when I scratch your ears. You make that funny rumble sound, remember? Come on, kitty. Let me help you feel better. Beta stopped right in front of him. The creature was so close that Deho could feel the heat radiating from its body. He could see his own reflection in Bada's yellow eyes. The moment stretched. In the observation gallery, no one moved. No one breathed. Then Bada lowered its head and pressed it into Deho's hand. The tension drained from the creature's body like water. The scales settled back down. The red light stopped flashing and returned to that slow, steady pulse. Bada's tail stopped lashing and instead moved in a gentle sweep from side to side. Deho scratched behind Bada's ear ridges, in the spots he knew the creature loved. Good kitty, he whispered. Such a good kitty. You were scared, but you trusted me. I'm so proud of you. That rumbling sound started again. The purr. Even with all the chaos and noise, Bada was purring. Deho moved carefully, shifting his position so his back was against the wall. Bada moved with him, keeping contact. Then the creature did something it had never done before. Beta lay down and rested its huge head on Deho's lap. The weight was substantial. Bada's head probably weighed 20 kilograms. But Deho didn't complain. He just kept scratching, kept talking in that calm, soothing voice. We'll wait here together, he said, until the doors open. You and me, kitty. We're safe together. In the observation gallery, Hyejin let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. He did it. They both did it, Nara corrected. Bada chose to trust him when every instinct probably said to fight or flee. Professor Veltaris was recording everything. Her scientific mind was working even through her fear. Do you understand what we just witnessed? The creature was in a high-stress situation. Unknown stimuli. Perceived threat. By all behavioral models, it should have either attacked or tried to hide. Instead, it sought comfort from a member of another species. That's what friends do, Hyejin said simply. When they're scared, they go to their friends. The station emergency lasted 90 minutes. The breach in the other wing turned out to be less serious than first thought. A containment unit had malfunctioned, releasing some silicon-based life forms into the ventilation. They were harmless, just confusing to the sensors. When the emergency finally ended and the blast doors opened, the security team found Deho sitting with his back to the wall. Bada's head was still in his lap. The creature was actually sleeping, its breathing deep and steady. The red lights under its scales pulsed slow and peaceful. Deho looked up at the security team and put a finger to his lips. Shh. Kitty is sleeping. The story spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The footage of Deho and Bada during the emergency was viewed billions of times. Scientists, politicians, military leaders, and ordinary beings all watched the same thing. A deadly predator choosing trust over instinct. The academic world was in an uproar. Papers were written. Theories were proposed. Everyone wanted to understand how this was possible, but for Deho, it was simple. Later that night, after the chaos had calmed and Bada was back in its habitat, Professor Viltaris called Deho to her office. Her skin was cycling through colors rapidly, something she did when thinking hard. That was extremely dangerous, she said. I know. You could have been killed. I know. And yet, you never showed fear. Why? Deho thought about the question. I was afraid, he admitted. When those alarms went off and the doors sealed, I was terrified. But being afraid and showing fear are different things. Bada needed me to be calm. Needed someone to be steady when everything else was chaos. So that's what I was. Veltaris studied him with her alien eyes. You humans are the strangest species I have ever encountered. And I have encountered 347 different species in my career. We're not that strange, Deho said. We see the universe differently. Where others see threats, we see possibilities. Where others see monsters, we see friends we haven't made yet. That philosophy is either the wisest thing in the galaxy, Veltera said, or the most foolish. I have not yet decided which, Deho smiled. Maybe it's both. That night, Deho sat with Bada in the habitat one more time. The creature was tired from the stress of the day. It lay with its head on Deho's leg just like during the emergency. You know what? Deho said quietly. Everyone out there is calling this a miracle. A breakthrough. They're writing papers and making theories. But to me, it's just simple. You're my friend. And friends take care of each other when things get scary. Bada's response was that deep, rumbling purr, and Deho knew that was all the agreement he needed. 3 months had passed since the emergency lockdown incident. The Galactic Academy had changed in ways no one expected. What started as one human student bonding with a dangerous creature had grown into something much bigger. The research paper was published. Deho, Hyejin, Nara, and Professor Veltaris had worked together to write it. The title was simple. Predator Bonding Protocols, a Human Perspective on Cross-Species Socialization. Within days, it became the most downloaded scientific paper in Academy history. Within weeks, it was being taught in universities on 50 different worlds. Bada was no longer called a specimen or an experiment. The creature had a new official classification, Ambassadorial Liaison. It was a fancy way of saying that Bada was now a teacher, showing the galaxy what was possible when species tried to understand each other instead of just being afraid. Deho had special permission to continue as Bada's primary caretaker. The bond between them had only grown stronger. Now when Deho entered the habitat, Bada would run to greet him. The massive predator would press its head against Deho's chest in what humans recognized as a hug. The creature's tail would sweep back and forth in happiness. But the real changes were happening across the entire station. The Academy started a new program called the Deathworld Integration Project. The goal was simple, to reconsider how the galaxy approached species from dangerous worlds. For too long, beings from Class 6 and above death worlds were automatically labeled as too dangerous for standard contact. Now, thanks to what Deho had proven, that was changing. Nara took charge of studying dangerous plants. It turned out that humans were also good at working with aggressive vegetation. On Earth, humans had learned to grow and even eat plants that were poisonous, thorny, or carnivorous. Nara now had 3 specimens from different hostile environment worlds in her greenhouse lab. She was using techniques from Earth agriculture to understand them. This one is actually fascinating, she explained to a group of visiting students. She pointed at a plant that looked like it was made of glass knives. On its homeworld, this plant shoots poison thorns at anything that comes close. But look, she approached slowly, moving in a pattern she had learned through weeks of observation. The plant's leaves followed her movement but didn't shoot. It's learned I'm not a threat. Now I can study it safely and it's not stressed by constant fear. Hyejin focused on designing better habitats. Most enclosures in zoos and research stations across the galaxy were built with one priority: keeping dangerous things contained. They weren't designed for the creature's comfort or mental health. Think about it, Hyejin explained to a class. You take a creature from a complex environment and put it in a box. It can't explore, can't hunt, can't do any of the behaviors it evolved for. Of course, it becomes aggressive and unpredictable. It's bored and frustrated. Her new designs included enrichment activities, environmental complexity, and spaces that could be adjusted based on the creature's needs. 5 research stations had already requested her consultation. 2 interplanetary zoos were redesigning their entire facilities based on her plans. But the real test was coming. The Galactic Council had sent representatives to see the human method in action. These were important beings from powerful civilizations. They had the authority to make decisions that would affect the entire galaxy. If they were convinced, the way the galaxy treated Deathworld species would change forever. If they weren't convinced, everything would go back to the way it was. The demonstration was scheduled in the Academy's main arena. The space had been modified with safety systems, but it was open enough to show real interaction. Thousands of beings watched through screens across multiple worlds. The observation galleries were packed with representatives from hundreds of species. Professor Veltaris stood at the center of the arena. Her crystal skin was showing confidence, but Deho knew her well enough now to see the nervous colors flickering underneath. "What you are about to witness," Veltaris announced, "challenges everything we thought we knew about predator-prey dynamics, threat assessment, and the nature of consciousness itself." Deho entered the arena from one side. He wore his normal clothes, carried nothing special. Just a human student walking across a floor. From the other side, Bada was released. The creature had grown in the months at the Academy. Good food, proper care, and mental stimulation had made Bada even more magnificent. The black scales gleamed. The red lights under the skin pulsed in complex patterns. Muscles moved like machinery under that armored hide. Every being watching was reminded that this was an apex predator from a Class 7 Deathworld. This was death given form and intelligence. Bada saw Deho. The creature's entire body language changed instantly. The red lights shifted to that slow rhythmic pulse that meant happiness. Bada's head lifted, ear ridges perked forward. Then Bada ran. Not attacked. Ran, like an earth dog greeting its owner after a long day. Like a cat rushing to the door when someone comes home. The massive predator crossed the arena in seconds. But instead of striking, instead of showing any aggression, Bada slid to a stop in front of Deho and pressed its head against his chest. Deho laughed, a sound of pure joy. He scratched Bada's favorite spots, and the creature's rumbling purr echoed through the arena's speakers. "This is not training," Veltaris explained to the watching crowd. "This is not conditioning or control. This is genuine affection. A bond between 2 intelligent beings from completely different evolutionary paths." Then came the moment that would be talked about for generations. A delegate from the Sentinel Coalition stood. They were a militaristic species, very focused on hierarchy and control. "This is one creature with one human. How do we know others can learn this? How do we know it's safe?" Deho looked at Professor Veltaris. They had prepared for this question. "Watch," Deho said. Into the arena came Bryn. The insect-like student had failed spectacularly the first time he tried to approach Bada. But that was months ago. Since then, Bryn had spent countless hours learning, not just watching Deho, but studying the principles behind what Deho did. Learning about body language, fear management, communication without words. Bryn walked slowly across the arena floor. The being's movements were careful but not jerky. Calm but not frozen. Bryn had learned how to control the fear pheromones that his species naturally released. Bada watched this new approach. The creature's head tilted in that curious way. Bada remembered this being. Remembered the first encounter where fear had been so strong. But now, something was different. Bryn stopped 3 meters from Bada and Deho. The insect-like being did what Deho had taught. Extended a limb, palm equivalent down, fingers equivalent slightly bent. For a long moment, nothing happened. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then Bada took a step forward. Then another. The creature approached Bryn carefully, cautiously but with curiosity instead of aggression. Bada sniffed Bryn's extended limb. The creature's yellow eyes studied this being who had once smelled of pure fear, but now smelled of calm. Then Bada pressed its head forward, just slightly making contact with Bryn's limb. Bryn's translator caught the whispered words. "Hello, friend," the arena erupted. Not in applause because many species didn't have that tradition, but in the equivalent expressions from hundreds of different cultures. Approval, amazement, acceptance. The demonstration continued. Daiho showed how he had taught Bada simple commands, not through force but through cooperation. Bada demonstrated problem-solving skills that most people didn't know the species had. The creature and the human worked together like a team. That evening, the representatives met in private with the project team. The conversation was long and complex, covering science, philosophy, politics, and ethics. "You must understand what you have done," said the representative from the Alconian Empire. "You have made us question our entire approach to intelligent life. We always measured civilization by technology, by conquest, by power, but maybe we should have been measuring it by the ability to see beyond fear." Professor Veltaris spoke up. "The humans did not have faster ships or better weapons when we found them. But they had something we had lost or never had, the courage to reach out to what scares them." The Wraith clan representative, whose species rarely spoke in public, said, "This both terrifies and inspires us. If we can bond with apex predators from Deathworlds, what else is possible? How many species have we avoided or fought because we were afraid?" Daiho felt uncomfortable being at the center of this discussion. "We're not special," he insisted. "We're just products of our world. Earth was dangerous. We survived by adapting, by cooperating, not just with other humans but with everything around us. We domesticated wolves not by conquering them but by offering partnership. And that," said the Sentinel Coalition delegate, "is what changes everything." Late that night, Daiho sat alone with Bada in the habitat. The creature's head was resting on his lap as it often did now. The red lights under Bada's scales pulsed in a slow, sleepy rhythm. "You know what's funny?" Daiho said quietly. "I just wanted to pet the space cat. I didn't mean to start a revolution." Bada made a sound somewhere between a purr and a sigh, "But I'm glad we did," Daiho continued. "Because now everyone can see what I saw from the beginning. You're not a monster. You're a person. Different kind of person than me." 10 years had passed since that first day when Daiho called a deadly predator Kitty and scratched its head. The galaxy was a different place now. Not completely different, but changed in important ways. The Galactic Academy had become famous across all known space. Students came from every corner of the galaxy to study the new field of interspecies bond studies. What had started as 3 human students and their strange ideas was now a full department with professors from dozens of species. Daiho was now the director of the Interspecies Bond Institute. The title sounded fancy, but his job was simple: teach beings from across the galaxy how to approach each other with curiosity instead of fear. How to see potential friends instead of threats. Bada was still with him. The Vrakian slasher was older now, moving a bit slower but still healthy and strong. The creature's black scales had a few gray edges now. The red lights under the skin pulsed a bit slower, but Bada still ran to greet Daiho every morning. Still pressed that massive head against Daiho's chest. Still purred when Daiho scratched behind the ear ridges. They were not alone anymore. Daiho had taken in other rescue cases over the years. In one habitat lived a pack-hunting avian from a Class 8 Deathworld. The birds looked like they were made of knives and anger, but they would gently take treats from Daiho's hand. In another habitat was something that looked like a 6-legged bear but, as Daiho always said, is really just a big softie. Hyejin had her own success story. She was now chief designer for the Galactic Conservation Corps. Her habitat designs were being used across the galaxy. 17 species had been saved from extinction because her environments allowed them to thrive instead of just survive. Zoos and research stations everywhere wanted her consultation. She had revolutionized how beings thought about captive care. "It's not enough to keep something alive," she would explain in her lectures. "We have to give them a life worth living. Space to explore. Things to do. Choices to make. Dignity." Nara ran the aggressive Flora research station. The facility was on a small moon, far from populated areas. There she worked with the galaxy's most dangerous plants, things that exploded when touched, plants that could eat metal, vegetation that communicated through toxic spores. Her greatest achievement was a carnivorous plant from a Class 9 Deathworld. It had evolved to eat anything that came near it. But through patient work and earth agriculture techniques, Nara had cultivated a variety that produced fruit. That fruit was now safe for 14 different species to eat and was being considered as a food source for planets with harsh environments. People think I'm crazy, Nara would say with a smile. But then again, people thought Deho was crazy for petting Bada. Now look at us. Today was a special day. The Galactic Council had declared it Interspecies Friendship Day. It was the anniversary of that first moment when Deho scratched Bada's head and the galaxy watched in disbelief. Now it was a celebration of everything that had changed since then. Across hundreds of worlds, beings celebrated in their own ways. Schools taught children about seeing past fear. Research stations opened their doors to show the public how they cared for Deathworld species. Governments announced new policies for integrating dangerous species into galactic society. At the Academy, the celebration was bigger than anywhere else. The demonstration arena was packed with visitors, students from current classes, alumni who had graduated, scientists, politicians, families. Even some who had been skeptical 10 years ago had come to see what the Academy had become. Professor Veltaris, now retired but still active in research, was giving a speech. Her crystal skin shimmered with pride. 10 years ago, I thought I was teaching a lesson about fear. Instead, I learned a lesson about courage. Courage doesn't mean having no fear. It means choosing connection despite fear. She gestured to where Deho stood with Bada. This human and this Vrakian slasher taught us that the universe is not divided into threats and safety. It is divided into those we have tried to understand and those we haven't tried yet. The crowd made their various sounds of agreement. Then came the surprise. Into the arena walked a small group. They were Vrakian slashers but younger than Bada. Much younger. These were cubs, barely a year old. They had been born at a conservation facility that was using the human methods of socialization. The cubs moved with the curiosity of all young creatures, exploring everything, playing with each other. When they saw Bada, they ran over with excited sounds. Bada, for the first time in public, showed a new side. The older slasher greeted the cubs with gentle rumbles. Let them climb on the broad back. Nuzzled them when they got too rough with each other. This was Bada as a teacher, showing the young ones how to exist in a universe that was bigger and stranger than their instincts prepared them for. The cubs, raised around multiple species from birth, showed no fear of the crowd. One of them wandered over to a young Alconian student. The student, who had studied human methods, slowly extended a crystalline limb. The cub sniffed curiously, then pressed its small head forward for scratches. The student obliged, and the cub's red lights pulsed in happiness. This is the future, Hijin said, watching from the observation area. Not just teaching adults to overcome fear, but raising the next generation to never have that fear in the first place. But not everything was perfect. There were still problems, still challenges. Some species refused to accept the new ways. They insisted that dangerous creatures should be avoided or controlled, never befriended. A few governments had banned the human methods entirely, claiming they were too risky. There had been accidents. A researcher on a distant station had been injured trying to bond with a predator without proper training. A facility had released a Deathworld species too soon, causing panic. These incidents were used by critics as proof that the whole idea was foolish. But for every failure, there were dozens of successes. Species that were once scheduled for extermination were now thriving. Research that was impossible before was now routine. Understanding that seemed unreachable was now common. During the evening celebration, Deho gave a short speech. He had never been comfortable with public speaking, but this was important. 10 years ago, I did something that seemed simple to me but shocked everyone else. I looked at a deadly predator and thought, I want to be friends with that. Everyone thought I was crazy. Maybe I was a little crazy. The crowd made sounds of laughter. But here's what I learned, Deho continued. Every being in the universe, no matter how different they look or how dangerous they seem, shares some basic needs. We all want to feel safe. We all want to be understood. We all want to matter to someone. That's true whether you're a human from Earth or a Vrakian slasher from a volcanic hell world. He reached down and scratched Bada's head. The creature leaned into the touch, that familiar purr rumbling through the arena's speakers. So yes, I called this magnificent creature Kitty. I scratched its head like you would pet an Earth cat. And everyone said it was impossible. But it wasn't impossible. It just required something simple, the belief that understanding is always possible if we try. Later that night, long after the celebrations ended, Deho sat in Bada's habitat. The older slasher's head was on his lap, as it had been thousands of times before. The cubs were sleeping in a pile in the corner, tired from all the excitement. "We did good, didn't we, Kitty?" Deho said quietly. Bada's response was that deep rumbling purr, the sound that had once terrified scientists and now soothed anyone who heard it. "I know you're getting older. I am too, but we changed things. Made the galaxy a little bit better, a little bit kinder. That's not bad for a human and his space cat." Hyejin and Nara joined him. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Three humans far from Earth, surrounded by creatures that most of the galaxy had once called monsters. "You know what's amazing?" Nara finally said. "There are kids now all across the galaxy, different species who grew up watching videos of you and Bada. They never learned to be afraid first. They learned to be curious first." "That's the real change," Hyejin agreed. "Not the policies or the programs. The change in how young beings see the universe. They're growing up knowing that different doesn't mean dangerous, that powerful doesn't mean enemy." Deho smiled. "I hope they do better than we did. I hope they find even more ways to connect, even more friendships we never imagined." "They will," Nara said with certainty, "because we showed them it was possible." Across the galaxy at that very moment, countless small acts of courage were happening. An insectoid researcher extending a limb to a predator from a Class 6 world, a crystalline being learning to care for aggressive plants, a military species deciding to study instead of destroy an unknown creature. Each act was small, but together, they were changing everything. In a research station near the galactic core, a young student approached a containment unit. Inside was a creature from a newly discovered Deathworld. It looked terrifying, all spines and rage and ancient predator instincts. The student's supervisor asked, "What do you think? How should we classify it?" The student studied the creature carefully, then smiled. "I think it looks like it needs a friend." The supervisor, who had studied the human methods, nodded approvingly. "Then let's introduce ourselves. Slowly, carefully, with respect." This scene was being repeated on dozens of worlds.